A very good morning to one and all present. Our first speaker for today is Dr. Binita Tiwari from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Kharagpur. With a PhD from IIT Roorkee, Professor Tiwari's expertise revolves around human resource management, organizational behavior, entrepreneurship, and innovation. For her extensive work, ma'am has received various Best Paper awards by esteemed institutions like the Academy of Management. In addition to her incredible academic and scholarly contribution to her area through published articles in top journals, Dr. Tiwari has contributed to practice and policy making through various projects funded by the Government of India in areas like women entrepreneurship, MSME development, and justice. We are incredibly privileged to have ma'am with us today for the session on digital transformation in business and economics. I'd like to invite Professor Vikas Thakur to kindly felicitate ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir.
यहाँ से करो हाँ she's there
Thank you. So, okay, yeah, thank you, Devanshi. So, shall we start? Okay. So, I hope my PPT. Yeah. It's not working. Okay, this will not work.
You can use this keyboard also.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, I welcome you all to this workshop. So, the topic of today's session is smart workforce in the era of Industry 4.0. I hope you all must be aware about the concepts, the phenomena of Industry 4.0. So, we'll talk a little bit about it, a brief overview. What do you mean by Industry 4.0? What is the digital advent? And then we'll come across like how the smart talent and smart workforce is of utmost importance when we are talking about this new sinusoidal wave. So, I'll start with the content. We'll start with a brief overview of Industry 4.0, then we'll talk about the digital readiness in the area of artificial intelligence. We'll also talk about the digital transformation, like how you can prepare a smart workforce, and then we'll talk about like what is the role of upskilling and reskilling the workforce in the advent of Industry 4.0. And I will also show a few frameworks like how the community engagement and talent retention can be done in the advent of Industry 4.0. So we'll start with the introduction. Now, as you all know that firms or the organizations, they are very much susceptible, right, to the market changes and the market complexities. Now, those complexities could be, you can say, an intense competition, or maybe sometimes changing customer requirements, sometimes it could be technological disruptions, and yes, of course, the pandemic outbreak. And all these things together have compelled the firms to actually survive and sustain in this new era of digital disruptions with more resilience and more flexibility. So we all are aware that this digital disruption has caused a whole paradigm shift when we are talking about, and it has not only transformed, the industries, whether it is manufacturing or IT or any other service sector, but it has also transformed the businesses, the societies, as well as the economy. So when we are talking about the Industry 4.0, specifically the phenomena, we'll just start with a brief introduction. So I hope you all are aware, it is quite evident that from a technological perspective, the industries have undergone different industrial revolutions, right? You start from your Industry 1.0, we are now talking about Industry 4.0. There is much more beyond, right? We are talking more about Industry 5.0, more of a hybrid approach. But if we start from the 18th century, as you can see over here, we are talking about like how the sinusoidal wave has happened and a lot of changes and reforms are being there in the employment landscape. When we are talking about your Industry 1.0, we are talking more about like how the humans, they use the machines for mass production. Then we move forward to your Industry 2.0, where we talk more about job specifications. We try to understand the division of labor. And thereafter, we come across the third revolution, that is the industry 3.0. Now this is the stage where your automation, internet, and you can say the computer technology came into picture. And now you all are aware with this term, that is industry 4.0, which has created a global storm in the market. When we talk about industry 4.0, it's a kind of a human-centric approach. We are talking about a P2P interface, basically how the physical and the digital interface is there, so that we can streamline the production process, we can streamline the manufacturing process in order to ensure a smooth living, right? Now, this industry 4.0 includes lot of innovative technologies. You can name a few, like artificial intelligence, we have big data analytics, we have robotics, cobots that we refer nowadays. We are also talking about your cyber physical systems, right? So all these amalgamation of these new emerging innovative technologies are included in the advent of industry 4.0. Now when we are talking about industry 4.0, specifically, if we just see a comparative way from your pre-pandemic, now coming to the new era, let us assume the outlook of 2025. If we see in the pre-pandemic, as you can see, there are few of the parameters or the benchmarks based on which you can actually assess like how much upsurge is there for the adoption of industry 4.0 nowadays across the sectors, or you can say worldwide. As you can see, global industry 4.0 adoption has been increased to 40% worldwide. When we are talking about leading and upcoming regions, pre-pandemic, yes of course, if we compare with the developed nations, yes of course, they're at the higher bar. But nowadays, the Asia Pacific regions or the emerging economies are also at the nascent stage of adopting the industry 4.0 technologies. Now the third, we are also talking about some of the maturing sectors. Now it has been shifted from your electronics, manufacturers, yes of course, to more energy and utility sectors. And last, your mature adopters, the rate will be increased from 30% to 70% in order to sustain and survive in a resilient business environment. Now when we're talking about the whole journey of industry 4.0, let us assume if we start from 2011 when there is this advent of industry 4.0, now everyone in every sector wants to include IT, the inclusion of IT adoption in the organization. Then thereafter, as you can see in 2015, more inclusion about the cloud, big data, IoT was there. And when we move forward, there is more inclusion about penetration of your AI in the smart factories. We are talking more about the factory systems. And as you can see, post-pandemic and amid the pandemic, we actually understand like how the digitalization and yes of course the reforms that are being there in industry 4.0 has changed the employment landscape, and yes of course how it is very crucial for your business resistance as well as for the survival. Now let us say when we are talking about industry 4.0, it's all about a kind of, you can say, a decision flow in the organization, right? So industry 4.0, if we say, it's all about, the amalgamation of data and insights, okay? So there is a free flow of data and insights. It is not a uni approach, but yes, of course, a bi-directional approach. With the help of your industry 4.0, the companies can actually have an agile and very contextualized planning and execution starting from your shop floor level till your boardroom level, okay? And when we are talking about your industry 4.0 as well, it actually has created a digitalized experience all over and across the globe. Now when we have talked about traditional decision flow, there are different levels in the organization. We are either talking about the tactical level, we are talking about the mid-level strategies, or maybe the executive levels. Now as you can see, the insights flow down, the planning has come across like how the implementation or the initiation should be done, okay, across all the levels. But when we are talking about the data flow, that is being required from bottom to the top. So this is a traditional decision flow approach. But now when we talk about industry 4.0, we are talking about three different parameters. So one is your automated, second is your real time, And third is your predictive. We can clearly understand with this thing, basically industry 4.2 technology, it is all about a use case. Use case in a sense, what kind of work need to be done in the organization for which you need industry 4.2 or maybe those technologies. So let us say whether they are any connected work, let us say you can talk about, in order to reduce the scheduled operations maybe at a flow level, okay, so that you can get a real time data, RFID, you can track, you can trace, right, logistic in your warehouse management. Now let us say it is a precision work. Now precision work basically requires again shop flooring, customization, or maybe more about high-ended risky projects. Now when we talk about intelligent work, so intelligent work talks more about predictions, like how you estimate, how you forecast the decisions, right? Now the decisions could be maybe procurement management, inventory management, supply chain management, your workforce management specifically, right? How you can ensure the supply and demand of, let us assume, the talent, simple, the talent or the human capital in the organization, or maybe you can talk about a warehouse management, okay? So all in all, and the fourth one is basically your, let us say, visible supply chain. Now visible supply chain where you can easily track, you can easily trace basically the movement of the machinery items, right? So according the use case, one can easily understand what could be the objectives and how they are going to implement those objectives or maybe the solutions across different levels. And that's why we say it is a connection between data and insights. Now here when we are talking about automated, now automated again, when we are talking about, like I've explained, you can use AR, VR based operator, right? There are a lot of companies like you can say Maruti, they are using AR, VR technologies to train their employees. There are Coal India Limited who are using simulators, right, operators in order to train their employees to work in mines, right? So different technologies are being used in order to train, in order to increase the operational efficiency in the organization. Now when we are talking about your real time, now real time is basically again, like I've said, a shop floor, maybe inventory management. All of you must be heard about it, like RFID. We can easily track on time the real base data that we are fetching, right, from those intelligent solutions. And last, when we are talking about predictive. Now predictive is basically, like I've said, you are estimating something, you're forecasting something. You're forecasting like what could be my proactive approach using maybe my current resources, and then you try to understand the trends and the patterns in order to forecast your future demands based on your current resources or your past trend data, okay? So this is how your industry 4.0 decision flow happens in the organization. Now, all in all, when we are talking about industry 4.0, we are talking about digitalization. It is all about digital transformation, right? So the biggest question is why we need that digital transformation. So I've already talked about industry 4.0, maybe the bit components of industry 4.0, why there is an upsurge, okay? But as we see lot of different factors that are being involved, like flexibility or long-term competitiveness or agility or your operational resilience. Now, in order to survive or in order to create a resilient organization, what is of utmost important? What is utmost important? Being agile, right? Being agile, being readily available to adopt the changing business demand and business environment, right? To understand, have that learning agility, that mental agility, that people agility, right, that behavioral agility to respond to the changing digital disruption area. ठीक? Now when we are talking about your industry 4.0 maturity assessment, from there we will come across to the role of talent, human capital in the organization. Now when we are talking about your maturity assessment, we have three different parameters, right? Three different parameters talk about like what are the possible drivers, how you are going to prepare, and third is what could be the benefit risk assessment. So everyone does the cost benefit analysis, right? So the same thing will be happening when you try to check the maturity assessment of the implementation of industry 4.0 technology. So let us say I talked about adoption drivers, adoption preparedness, and the last is benefit risk assessment. So when we start with the adoption drivers, so we try to understand like why it is important. Like we have already discussed, like why, what is the role of digitalization, how they ensure the streamline of the business process, they ensure risk mitigation. Then the second comes across key organizational objective driving Industry 4.0. So like I've said, there are 3 different levels, right? We talk about the top level, the mediocre level, and the lower level. Now when we talk about the organizational objectives, whether there is a necessity to implement Industry 4.0 technologies in the organization. So you create an objective, like I want to streamline, I want to make my organization more leaner, more flatter, more cross-functional. Let us assume this, right? Now second is adoption preparedness. Now for preparedness, we come across first thing, the use case prioritization. That's what I referred. Either you are going to use for precision work, either you are going to use for connected work, either you are going to use for intelligent work, or either you are simply just want to trace the movement of your machinery items, trace and tracking mechanism. Okay. Then level of focus in the growth of R&D. Whenever we talk about innovation or let us say Industry 4.0, there is a whole process. The process starts like how you initiate, then second is the decision to adopt, and third is the implementation. But for all this adoption of innovation, what is required is the talent, right? The key talent, or maybe you can say the smart workforce in the organization. So when we are talking about the second component, that is basically the level of focus in the growing R&D, whether it is an in-house space or whether it has been sourced externally, right? And the third is hiring and skilling. Now hiring and skilling actually talks about your pool of talent in the organization. Now companies are doing automation. So now new job roles are being there, right? So for those new job roles, again there is a new skill set definitely that will arise, right? In order to have those new skill sets, people need to be trained, people need to be skilled enough to hold those job roles or new positions, right? So this skill mapping and as well as your hiring mapping need to be done in the organization in order to ensure that a suitable or maybe adequate pool of talent is available in the organization. And that's why we say that human capital or the talent is of utmost importance when we talk about the adoption of innovation in the organization. And the last is benefit risk assessment. Now when we talk about benefit risk assessment, we cannot surpass the barriers of Industry 4.0 adoption. So what could be the possible barriers? Anyone? What could be the possible barriers that you can think for the adoption of Industry 4.0? Maybe technological barriers, right? Maybe social barriers, right? And the first and the foremost is resistance towards change, right? And there are many of the companies that are facing a kind of a status quo because they have breached that resistance towards the change. Okay. Now second, we are talking about, let us say, potential risk. Now potential risk could be your maybe data threats, right? Security issues, ethical considerations, AI algorithm biases. We'll talk about the algorithms, we'll talk about the algorithms in our upcoming slides as well. And then the last, we are talking about like how the structure and the adjustments are being required. Do we have the adequate resources in the organization? Whether our organization is culturally fit to adopt those new technologies. Whether the perceived characteristics of innovation, they are there to adopt the innovative technologies or not. Now perceived characteristics means even if, let us say, this is a smart classroom, right? Now this is again, this is an intelligent solution, right? Now for this intelligent solution, if I say what could be the perceived characteristics of this technology, I would try to check the compatibility, right? Whether it is compatible, right, with the connected devices. Second, I may like to check the use, the utility, right, the acceptance, right? We are also talking about basically the usage of this particular intelligent solution, the ease of use, right? So all these characteristics and parameters need to be assessed when the company want to implement the innovative technologies or any new technology in the organization. Now, when we are talking about digital readiness in the era of industry 4.0, or let us say artificial intelligence, so we are talking about, there are some statistics like more companies, they increase the investment in core digital talent, because now we are moving ahead, we are talking about digital talent. There is a surge of the job positions like data scientist, project management, data management, right? So there is a huge upsurge when we see those statistics. There are certain examples, like one is being given by Ethicon, Johnson & Johnson company, like they have launched different skill training programs in order to skill their surgeons, okay, with the help of the technologies like AR and VR. There are companies like Coca-Cola, they have used their websites, the proper apps, chatbots, virtual bots in order to increase customer engagement as well as their retention rates. We have Samsung. All of you in your mobile phones nowadays, if you have iPhones, you have Siri, if now you have Samsung, you have Gemini, even you have Android, the version that you have Gemini, right? So now it is, why it is there? Again, how much user acceptance it is there, the ease of use is there, the utility rate is there, right? So we need to understand the characteristics of the technology that we are implementing in the organization and you are delivering to the customers, because at the end all these complexities will force, or you can say will compel, a company to deliver quality goods and services, right? So now we are talking about the future of the work. The future of the work is smart talent, right? So there are three dimensions when we talk about the future of the work. So first we talk about simply the work, whether we need to go for automation or augmentation, whether we are focusing on the workforce, right? Workforce includes all the stakeholders, your internal stakeholders, your external stakeholders, and the last is basically the workplace. Now when you see post pandemic or amid pandemic, yes, of course this hybrid work culture came into picture, right? So as you can see in this particular dimension, now as you can see over there, earlier current work options, when we see ki basically the focus will be more on the workplace horizon, right? But when we are going for more future work options, so we want to understand like basically how the amalgamation can happen in between all these three dimensions, keeping into mind that your workforce could be retained, whether the person will work hybridly or maybe in the organization, and yes, of course, what work need to be automated, what technologies need to be implemented. So all in all, like there is a statement that has been written, like as technology advances and automate, the question changes. Okay, so it's not about the digital transformation that influences the business, it's about the people, it's about the workforce to thrive in the business, right? And when we talk about a digital stay or a digital strive in the organization, we're talking about a whole cultural shift. We're talking more about innovation, we're talking more about continuous learning, we're talking more about the concept of learning organizations. In every organization like Apple, Google, Siemens, all these companies are learning organization because they keep on reviving, they keep on innovating their products in order to strive business excellence and to strive or sustain in the market complexity. So when we are talking about the human challenge, or you can say the human face of industry 4.0, so we are talking about like what could be the different skill sets that are in demand, right? So yes, of course, technical skills, because we are talking about the digital talent, but do you think it is sufficient if we're just talking about the digital talent, right? We are talking about the technological skills. As I've written, they will obsolete at one point of time, because like I've said in my just earlier slide, it is a sinusoidal wave. And the revolution, it keeps on changing, and you have to either reskill, you have to either upskill your skill sets, upskill yourself in order to do new job positions and to survive in the business economy, right? So when we are talking about the technical skills, in addition to that, soft skills are very much important. Now here comes a very interesting topic to be discussed, that is algorithms, and the second one is algorithms. Have you heard about this topic? Let me show you. When we talk about your algorithms here, algorithms basically talks about whatever we are learning in your AI, machine learning, AL, right? All the algorithms, okay, supervised learning, unsupervised learning. But when we are talking the concept of algorithms, algorithms is something that is human centric. Human centric basically means the intuitiveness, the tacit knowledge that could be used and act as a creative tool in order to make decisions in the organization. So now the focus should be shifted more from algorithms towards your algorithms in order to have a humanoid perspective in the organization, right? Now coming back to this element where we talk about more on the workforce and talking more about the skill sets. So in that case, the soft skills, basically, let us say even if the machines are there, what is more important? The social connect, right? The emotional intelligence, yes? Which one? Algorithms, okay. See, when we talk about here the soft skills, right? So soft skills, basically we are talking about the human touch, right? We are talking more about the social connect. We are talking about empathy. We are talking about more of good interpersonal communications, right? But what is the main asset the human have is the tacit knowledge, right? When we talk about the knowledge, we talk either it is a explicit knowledge or either it is a tacit knowledge. Now the explicit knowledge, it is all here. We have the solutions, we have the programs, we have the algorithms, right? It can be coded, it can be documented. But when we are talking about your tacit knowledge, now tacit knowledge brings more intuitiveness in the decision making. It brings more cognitive element when you make the decisions in the organization, right? So let us say all those other fundamentals like over here mentioned, like as you can see the values, okay. So values, again, it is person centric. When we are talking about the passion, when we are talking about critical thinking, when we are talking about creativity, insight, so like I've said, you again remember that pyramid. That pyramid talks about data and insights, right? You have the data, you can trace the data, you can map the trend, you can map the pattern because you have algorithms. You're working on numbers, right? You're working on data, facts. But when we are talking about the insights, so the insights, when you talk about the decision making, it is more of, both ways, the logical or maybe the intuitive decision making, let us assume this. So we can't surpass the intuitive capability or intelligence of humans in the organization, and that's what we refer as algorithms. So algorithms is basically how you use that capability along with the usage of the learning that you are getting from the intelligent technologies, let us say, in order to have informed decision making in the organization. So again there is this rapid shift. Otherwise we all say because technological skills will obsolete at one point of time, but what will sustain is the mind, right? Is the mind, is the creativeness, is the curiosity. That curiosity will make one different from the machines, right? The emotional intelligence, that empathy, that social connect is very much important, and all these components and fundamentals come under the umbrella term of algorithms, okay? So now when we are talking about your skill sets, so as you can see, we need to develop, we need to upskill, we need to reskill our talent in the organization, right? Now let us say upskill, if a person is having some work on the shop floors, okay, so in a case if you want to, let us say upskill, so he will develop some more skills to do the same job role, right? But when we talk about the reskill, maybe some new position along with just the operator, maybe a managerial or a supervisor position, so whether he is ready to take that new position, so in that order the person need to be reskilled, okay. So that's how we say even if the job displacement is there, but the new job roles are also being there with the advent of Industry 4.0, right? So over here, let us quickly just come across with the different barriers, like what would happen when we try to develop the skill set of your workforce. It could be maybe lack of infrastructure is there, you don't provide proper training programs or maybe training mechanisms. Even sometimes the companies are quite skeptical. They don't want to invest in the training programs, right? So maybe because they are skeptical in getting the ROIs at the end. Now also the companies, they don't go for proper planning. Planning in a sense, that is a skill gap. Whether you have adequate pool of talent in the organization or not. How you are going to do that? When you have a proper skill gap analysis. You try to understand the supply and demand of talent in the organization. So as you can see, the impact is quite high. We are talking about more about the smart workforce, like how the talent management is put at priority across different sectors, across different countries. We are also talking about like how by 2030, as you can see, the people, they need to switch the jobs and learn the new skills, right? Because again, it keeps on changing, right? Because again, it is a revolution. It is a kind of a wave, right? So now the wave is Industry 4.0, maybe in future it is more of a hybrid approach, it is Industry 5.0, it is more of a greenfield approach, it is more of a mixed approach, it could be it is already a brownfield approach, right? So when we talk about this, so 44% by the report from Future of Jobs, they stated that the reskilling and upskilling is very much required in order to strive in the business. So we need to understand the two different terms, that is, one is your future proof, you should have that talent base. Second is a data driven business. So now you understand like how we want to amalgamate, we want to create a humanoid, a human AI interface so that we can run the business, we can achieve a sustenance in the marketplace. So when we try to future proof the talent pipeline in order to ensure that we have done the skill gap analysis, we are aware, we have seen the trends and the patterns, we are aware there are the new job positions in the market, and accordingly either we are going to have the required talent or we need to outsource it from the external market. But that planning need to be done on a readily basis by the organization. Second is basically a data driven. Now a data driven business, again you remember the case use. You should be very much clear when we state certain objectives, like why we want to go for Industry 4.2 implementation. If you simply imitate the other organization, it is not necessary that it could be a success, right? So similarly, let us say you just take an example of Nokia, right? Why Nokia failed? At the very early stage. Now a lot of mergers are there with the Nokia, but at the starting stage, because they didn't understand what the customers are preferring, right? They have their own solutions, they have their own interface, and why Samsung and Sony, they won the battle? Because they understand the user acceptance over there. Alright, so in order to understand that you have the talent in the organization, that talent should be adequate enough, having adequate skill sets to opt the new job role in the organization, so that they can understand how they can deliver the quality goods and services to the customers. So very quickly, the key skills for the digital workplace. We are talking about cybersecurity awareness. Digital literacy is very much important. Let us assume if it is a MSME. So MSME, yes, of course, the small and the medium, definitely they are quite much aware about the digital technology, maybe, you know, the usage of more internet facilities. But when we talk about the micro entrepreneurs, if you just go and talk to the rural entrepreneurs, they might be aware about, you know, the technology, the mobile phones, but they don't know how to access. We have fintech solutions, but they aren't aware about the fintech solutions, right? So again, ecosystem approach or maybe government support is very much required when we want to upskill and reskill the talent in the organization, or maybe let us say our people in simple terms. So this we have already seen. So at the end, what we need to focus is on three different parameters, that is, one need to scout, one need to shape, and then we need to shift. So basically, if you see the post-pandemic scenario, the whole this wave, it talks about how you survive in the marketplace, right? How you recover from the losses, and last is how you revive to rebound your position in the market. So over here when we say how you scout, Scout is basically again the skill demand gap. You do a proper skill gap analysis in order to understand whether sufficient talent is there or not. Second is basically shape. Now the shape is basically try to create a talent hub in the organization. And the third is basically the shift. The shift is basically you provide the adequate infrastructure in order to rescale at a bigger level. You want to offer a new roles, you want to open, let us say, a new subunit, but you don't have the resources, then definitely it is very challenging in order to train or to skill your employees. So now there are different strategies when we are talking about how you can reskill and upskill. Either you go with the training programs like the companies Mahindra, there are other companies as well like Accenture, they do provide training programs to their employees, okay, so that they can learn. Like Maruti, they go for AR and VR training programs in order to train their employees, okay, how the operator assistance, again it comes to the automated part of Industry 4.0 decision flow. When we are talking about mentorship and peer learning, now like I've said, again let us say for your mentorship, nowadays the companies they do provide mentors, like one of the example of Netflix, that they do have their buddy system in the organization which support their employees starting from the onboarding process in the organization, okay. And we are talking about continuous learning culture, which is very much important. Like I've said, ongoing training programs, more creative suggestions, innovative platforms, all these things will help in creating a continuous learning culture. And the last is digital learning platform and resources. So either we are talking about maybe some of the online courses, some of the certification programs, some of the platforms, some of the kind of training resources that are being provided by the industries. So like you can see for the training program, there is one example like Amazon. Amazon has an Amazon Technical Academy who provide the trainings to their non-technical staff. We have mentorship and peer learning like Microsoft. They have a tech mentor program, is one of the prime example. For your continuous learning culture, where we are talking about AT&T, where they try to create a future ready workforce in the organization through education. Again I said the curiosity, the creativeness that comes up from the human capital, right, and that's why they are of utmost importance and the main assets in the organization. Again the role of leadership plays a very important role, where again empathy, emotional intelligence, that also comes into picture, where we want to create a resilient or a sustainable organization. Because when we talk about emotional intelligence, specifically in the context of a VUCA environment, right, and VUCA environment, in order to make your employees rebound back from the setbacks, right, we need to have an emotionally intelligent leader. Right, even if there is a new inclusion of technology, we want to have a supportive leadership who can help, who can assist their employees, who can help them in training, who can help them in the division of the work roles and assistance in their job areas. So clear communication is very much important. The trust building, like I said, because it is a close association between the leader and their employees, and yes, of course, a vision setting. So like Adobe, the leadership style is very good. They have started this subscription based model, right? So that shows their finest leadership style, and which has been clearly communicated to all the employees, and accordingly the strategies are being framed, right? So when we are talking about a digital learning platform, we have IBM, we have TCS who also provide the digital learning platforms, more engagement platforms for their employees. So at the end we are talking about just a very brief, like how we are trying to understand, we are trying to create engaged community, or maybe you can say creating more smarter people, acquiring more smarter people, or developing more smarter people in the organization. Either we can focus on the locational branding when you try to acquire the talent. Specifically, let us say we are talking in the concept of smart cities, okay, we are talking about smart communities that will be used for the marketing purposes so that you can attract more prospective candidates. You have industry institute integration, again that is an academia base, so that more exposure will be there. We will provide more employment opportunities. Again, startups, entrepreneurship play a bigger picture nowadays when we talk about creating more employment opportunities. And yes, of course, the e-recruitment, that is again one of the new advent that the companies they are using. So the companies are using a blended approach in order to acquire the talent in their organization or in the community. Now second, when we talk about your talent development, so in order to develop, we use IoT resources, we use smart training. Let us say this smart classroom, again this is one of the base that can be used in order to train the students, in order to equip the knowledge, share the resources, right, with the audiences. Now we are talking about innovation and entrepreneurship. Creating an entrepreneurial mindset is of very much important, right, in order to encourage the students or maybe the people to come up with more creative and innovative ideas in order to strive the economy or the business. And yes, of course, the top management result, maybe if we talk about entrepreneur, we can talk about the government assistance, we can talk about the incubation assistance, we can talk about creating an entrepreneurial ecosystem, right, which can help assist and which can provide several training mechanisms and awareness to the young entrepreneurs. And yes, of course, all this will help in increasing the psychological empowerment among the people who will be highly motivated to work on those new business settings. And all in all, when we say, when we try to acquire the talent, when we try to develop the talent, we are leading towards community engagement. So the people will be more educated, the people will be more equipped with the resources, they understand the infrastructure, they collab with city administration, they fetch the online resources, and at different levels they show their level of engagement. Maybe at individual level, maybe fostering more resources, we are talking about societal level, community gatherings, okay, more programs. And then the last is the city level, where you are actually participating in renovating the city structure. The example is, let us say, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, right? So it is not an individual level, right? Either you can talk about it is maybe come at a societal level, or maybe it come at a city level. Let us say you take an example of Indore, let us say, right? So maybe at a city level, the people, they are educated enough, they are interested, empowered, encouraged enough to participate and to put the resources in order to make it happen, right? And at the end, we will try to assess, we are able to retain the talent in the community, right? Or maybe it could lead to more environmental benefits, where we are talking about more focus on the eco-friendly awareness, we are talking more about the social awareness, where customer integration is also there, community development is also there, and the last is the economy. In economy, definitely whole participation is there, new job, new employment generation will be there, and definitely it will help in boosting the economic growth. So this is just a basic template, like how the different enablers can be used for Industry 4.0 adoption. So we can talk about either one can fetch domestic market attractiveness in order to understand the market, the labor market tendency, clarity on the government policies and regulations. We should have the top management support. Then of course we are talking about more acceptance towards the change. This will lead to getting or understanding or using more IT infrastructure, and likewise you can talk about user acceptability that we have already discussed regarding the perceived characteristics of innovation, right? And at the end, we will try to create a learning culture in the organization that is very much required, because the advent is possible when we do have a smart workforce in the organization. So that's it for the class. So yeah, any questions? I think the time is. Okay. Yeah, any question? Yeah.
What is the status of the Indian companies right now? I mean, how they are reacting to this challenge of new workforce that they require?
Okay. See, when we talk about specifically the Industry 4.0, so as you can see in the emerging economies, specifically in the India, they are still dealing with the complexities of Industry 3.0, right? Where we are talking about talent shortages, we are talking about skill set gaps, right? Or the crunch. And Industry 4.0 is still promising, but is in the nascent stage. And in order to adopt those new or innovative technologies, again, so the concept of the smart talent and smart workers comes into picture. The company, again, like I've said, the trend is quite promising, but still it is in the nascent stage. Okay, because even there are a lot of the companies, if we see the software industries, they have more or less adopted several new innovative technologies. But if we compare it with the manufacturing, let us say maybe the steel industry, right, maybe the cement industry, let us say, so over there the rate of adoption is quite less. They are still the labor intensive firms, right? So what is at most importance is to first understand the skill gap analysis, and again to focus on the use case of Industry 4.0 technology that we discussed in the class, right? Like where you want to implement or use that IoT technology in the organization, and accordingly you have to understand whether you have the required skill set or not. And this is what the companies are doing. And that's why we are saying, like, they are offering the training programs, they are providing the certification courses, or maybe, you know, the digital platforms are being there, so that they can upsurge or they can reskill and upskill the employees in their organization. So I won't say that it is far behind approach, but yes, of course, it is promising, and the companies are trying to adapt slowly and steadily in that case.
Ma'am, regarding the startups, specifically those who are aimed towards the climate action, there, when we are looking into the picture, then we are seeing that it is mostly coming from the incubators of these IIMs and IITs and all, but they are, like, you know, they are, in order to survive, finance is a very important part of their life. But along with that, is it also the challenge of the new workforce which is stopping them from expanding?
See, we can't specifically deny this fact that yes, of course, there is a lot of transition that is being happening. The change in the mindset is there, and believing in this fact, like, it is stopping the entrepreneurial mindset over there, or maybe it act as a hurdle.
Or rather, like, you know, they are saying that after a particular time they are selling off their ideas. This is how they exit from the startup ecosystem.
And that's why we focus more on the survival rate of the startups, not just focusing on just, you know, keep on raising the bars or the numbers. It is more about the survival. It is more about the sustenance. So for that sustenance and survival, what is mostly important is to be creative, to be innovative, right? And for that innovative, again, we have certain parameters that need to be taken into consideration. So the one who focus on the ideas, right, who focus on their creative mindset, who understand like how they can explore the opportunities, how they can utilize those opportunities, definitely they will be having an edge in the market, right? They won't sell off after a particular time. Because sometimes what happen even in the entrepreneurs or the startup, it is a stagnant stage. Because there is no innovation.
Yes.
So that's why we say that even if the companies, they are not adopting, let us say they are not implementing maybe after a particular time, again they become stagnant. So that's why I said technological skills, they become obsolete at one point of time. What is more important is the human assets, the minds, their creative insights, right? How they create that innovative climate, how they come up with the team, with the leadership abilities, those things are very much important. And the ratio that you see, the people are more having entrepreneurial mindsets while working in the organization itself, right? So there is a more, you can say, leaving the jobs to start their own businesses.
Yes.
They come up with the idea, but again, in order to survive, in order to sustain, what is more important is resilience. So that resilience,
Sometimes they have that technological idea of starting what we say as renewable energy and all those, but they do not have the leadership skills
Yes.
to take the entire team ahead.
Yes, so it is not just a one parameter that would suffice that this parameter is of utmost importance if we want to increase the sustenance. We talk more about the resilience. Now the resilience comes from the characteristics, resilience comes from the leadership, resilience comes from maybe the work climate, resilience also comes from the resources. They are of utmost importance as well. So that's why we don't just focus on financial assistance, we talk the term ecosystem. right? So we have that entrepreneurial ecosystem where the top management support, the training, the financial, the access to the capital, everything is being included in that particular ecosystem, right? So I think we are done with the time. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed the session. So I think, yeah, that's it. Devanshi?